November 19th, 1942, 5:15 in the morning, Moscow time. Imagine standing on the frozen steppe west of Stalingrad. The temperature is 20 degrees below zero. Your breath crystallizes instantly in the air. And then, without warning, the world explodes. 3,500 Soviet guns open fire simultaneously across a front stretching 250 miles. The sound isn't just loud, it's beyond loud. It's a physical force that punches through your chest, ruptures eardrums, makes the ground beneath your feet ripple like water. German soldiers in forward positions are screaming, but they can't hear their own voices. The barrage is too intense. Some of them won't survive the next 10 minutes. Most won't survive the next 10 weeks. This is Operation Uranus, the Soviet counteroffensive designed to encircle the entire German Sixth Army at Stalingrad. But this story isn't really about that morning. It's about what happened 12 hours later, 40 miles behind the front lines, inside a concrete bunker that smells of cigarette smoke and desperation, when a group of German staff officers finished running their calculations and realized something that made their blood run cold. They were doomed. Not might be doomed, not probably doomed, were doomed. Mathematically, inevitably, irreversibly doomed. And there was absolutely nothing anyone could do to change it. Let me take you back 4 months so you can understand how we got here. July 1942. The German summer offensive in southern Russia is going spectacularly well. Army Group South has smashed through Soviet defenses and is racing toward the oil fields of the Caucasus. For Hitler, this isn't enough. He wants it all. He splits his forces, sending one army group south toward the oil, another east toward Stalingrad, the industrial city on the Volga River that happens to bear Stalin's name. His generals hate this decision. General Franz Halder, chief of the German General Staff, a man who's been planning military operations since before most of his officers were born, tells Hitler this violates every principle of warfare. You don't split your forces between two major objectives. You take one, consolidate, then move to the next. Take the Caucasus first, secure the oil that Germany desperately needs, then turn north to Stalingrad. Hitler's response? He fires Halder in September. The message is clear. I don't want military advice. I want obedience. By November 1942, General Friedrich Paulus and his Sixth Army have fought their way into Stalingrad itself. And let me tell you what urban warfare in Stalingrad actually means. These are German soldiers who conquered France in 6 weeks. 6 weeks! They blitzkrieged across Poland in less than a month. They've been trained to fight mobile warfare, rapid advances, encirclements in open terrain. Now, they're fighting for 3 weeks to capture a single factory. They're fighting room to room, floor to floor, sometimes literally for control of individual staircases. Soviet defenders are in the basement. Germans are on the first floor. They're throwing grenades at each other through holes in the floorboards. Snipers are dueling across streets that are nothing but rubble. The entire city looks like the surface of the moon. Corpses everywhere, buildings that are just broken teeth of concrete jutting from the ground. But Paulus keeps pushing because he's so close. By mid-November, German forces control 90% of Stalingrad. The Soviets are compressed into a narrow strip along the Volga River, barely a mile wide in some places. They're hanging on by their fingernails. One more push, just one more, and the city falls. Then the Sixth Army can rest, refit, and prepare for spring operations. That's what Paulus thinks. That's what his frontline commanders think. That's what almost everyone thinks. They're all wrong. On the morning of November 19th, German intelligence knows the Soviets are massing forces north and south of Stalingrad. Reconnaissance flights have spotted troop concentrations, supply dumps, artillery positions. But German command interprets this as defensive preparation, maybe limited local counterattacks to relieve pressure on the garrison in the city. The idea that the Soviets could launch a major encirclement operation seems absurd. The Red Army has been getting destroyed for 17 months. Since June 1941, they've suffered millions of casualties, lost entire army groups, retreated hundreds of miles. Where would they possibly get the forces for a major offensive? The answer is everywhere. While German forces have been grinding themselves to pieces in Stalingrad, Stalin has been doing something incredibly difficult. He's been hoarding reserves, pulling back divisions from quiet sectors, reconstituting shattered units, building up massive stockpiles of ammunition, fuel, and supplies. Most importantly, he's been waiting for the exact moment when German forces are overextended, undersupplied, and winter weather will limit their mobility. That moment is now. The Soviet assault hits Romanian armies positioned north and south of Stalingrad. Now, these aren't Germany's elite troops. Romania had to send armies to support the German invasion, so did Hungary and Italy. But they're equipped with outdated weapons, they have almost no anti-tank capability, and frankly, they're not particularly motivated to die for Hitler's ambitions in Russia. They're holding long stretches of front line that should have German divisions defending them. Within hours, these Romanian positions simply collapse. It's not a fighting retreat, it's a rout. Soviet tank formations pour through the gaps like water through a broken dam. They're not even stopping to consolidate. They're racing west, then south, then turning east in a massive pincer movement designed to link up behind Stalingrad and trap the entire Sixth Army. At 6th Army headquarters, Paulus gets the first reports around 8 a.m. Romanian forces under heavy attack, some positions being overrun. This isn't alarming yet. Paulus has dealt with Soviet counterattacks before. His staff starts preparing orders to move German reserve divisions up to stabilize the situation. Standard procedure, nothing to panic about. By noon, the situation looks much worse. The Romanian front hasn't just bent, it's shattered. Multiple sectors have completely collapsed. Soviet tanks are advancing rapidly westward. But even now, Paulus doesn't understand what's happening. He thinks this is a major counterattack aimed at relieving Soviet forces trapped in the city. His response is still tactical. Move this division here. Send that battalion there. Plug the holes. 40 miles north, at Army Group B headquarters, General Maximilian von Weeks is looking at the same intelligence reports and seeing something completely different. He's got a broader view of the battlefield. By early afternoon, he understands the pattern. Soviet forces aren't trying to relieve Stalingrad, they're trying to encircle it. This isn't a counterattack, it's a trap. And the Sixth Army is sitting right in the middle of it. Von Weeks immediately prepares orders for Paulus to break out westward while there's still time. Get out now, while the Soviet encirclement is still forming and relatively weak. Yes, you'll have to abandon Stalingrad. Yes, you'll take heavy casualties fighting through, but you'll save the army. Then Hitler's headquarters intervenes. The Führer's standing orders are crystal clear. German armies do not retreat. Hold all positions. Any encirclement can be broken from the outside while forces inside hold firm. This doctrine has actually worked before. Soviet forces have attempted several encirclements earlier in the war. German units held their positions, relief columns broke through, crisis averted. Hitler expects the same thing here. What he doesn't understand, what nobody at high command grasps yet, is the scale of what the Soviets have prepared. This isn't a hasty counterattack thrown together with whatever forces happen to be available. This is the result of months of meticulous planning. Over 1 million Soviet soldiers, 13,000 artillery pieces, 900 tanks, 1,100 aircraft. The forces executing this encirclement are massive, well-supplied, and operating according to a detailed plan that's been wargamed and refined since September. By the evening of November 19th, the Soviet pincers are converging. Northern and southern forces are racing towards each other. At 6th Army headquarters, staff officers are hunched over maps, plotting Soviet positions, calculating distances and speeds. Where are the encircling forces? How fast are they moving? When will they link up?
And then someone asks the critical question. How many German troops are about to be trapped? This is where the mathematics become unavoidable. Staff officers start counting. Every division, every battalion, every support unit that's going to be got inside when the pocket closes. The numbers keep climbing. 50,000. No, keep counting. 100,000. Keep counting. The 6th Army alone has over 250,000 men. Add in attached units, Romanian remnants that retreated into the pocket, support personnel, administrative staff. The total climbs toward 300,000. Colonel Reinhard Gehlen, Chief of Intelligence for the entire Eastern Front, arrives at headquarters with a detailed analysis. He's done the calculations. If this pocket closes, and it's going to close probably within 48 hours, approximately 280,000 German and Allied soldiers will be trapped. Now here's where it gets truly horrifying. Supplying a force that size requires about 500 tons of supplies per day, minimum. That's food, ammunition, fuel, medical supplies, everything an army needs to survive and fight. 500 tons every single day. The Luftwaffe, Germany's Air Force, has about 500 Ju-52 transport aircraft available on the entire Eastern Front. Many of them are in poor mechanical condition. Even under perfect conditions, flying maximum sorties with no aircraft losses, they might deliver 250 tons per day. Maybe. More realistically, accounting for winter weather, Soviet fighters, anti-aircraft fire, mechanical breakdowns, you're looking at 150 tons per day, perhaps 200 on a very good day. One of the staff officers does the math out loud. His voice is shaking slightly. 280,000 men, minimum 500 tons daily supplies needed, maximum 150 that can realistically be delivered. Deficit, 350 tons per day. Accumulated over 1 week, 2,450 tons short. Over 1 month, 10,500 tons short. The 6th Army will starve. Not might starve, will starve. They'll freeze to death in their positions long before any relief force can break through from outside. Another officer raises the obvious question. Why not break out right now, tonight, before the encirclement fully closes? Yes, it'll be costly. Yes, we'll take heavy casualties fighting through Soviet forces. But at least part of the army escapes. We save something instead of losing everything. The answer comes from General Arthur Schmidt, Paulus's chief of staff and a dedicated Nazi loyalist. Hitler's orders forbid retreat. The 6th Army will hold Stalingrad. Reichsmarshal Goering has personally guaranteed adequate air supply. Relief forces will break through from outside. This is not open for discussion. But the staff officers sitting in that bunker don't need orders to understand what's coming. The mathematics are inexorable. An army of 280,000 men trapped in winter with insufficient supply will cease to exist as a combat-effective force within weeks. This isn't pessimism. This isn't defeatism. This is arithmetic. Basic, brutal, unavoidable arithmetic. Major Joachim Weider, an intelligence officer present at these discussions, survived the war and later wrote about that night. His description is chilling. We sat there in complete silence, looking at the numbers on our maps and charts. Every officer in that room had done the same calculations independently. We all reached the same conclusion. The 6th Army was already dead. It just didn't know it yet. We had condemned over 250,000 men to death through a combination of stupidity, ideology, and Hitler's refusal to accept reality.
Think about that for a moment. These officers know with mathematical certainty that they and everyone under their command are going to die. Not in some abstract future, in the next few weeks. And there's nothing they can do because the man making decisions is 1,500 miles away in a comfortable headquarters living in a fantasy world where willpower overcomes logistics. By the morning of November 20th, the situation has deteriorated even further. Soviet forces have advanced another 30 kilometers during the night. The encirclement is tightening like a noose. More German units are being cut off. And critically, the window for breakout is closing. Within 24 hours, it'll be too late. The Soviet ring will be complete and strong enough that breaking through would require abandoning all heavy equipment, all wounded soldiers, most supplies. Even then, casualties would be catastrophic. Paulus sends an urgent message to Army Group headquarters. The 6th Army can still fight its way west if ordered immediately. Every hour of delay makes escape more difficult. By tomorrow, it may be impossible. Von Weichs supports this request completely. He forwards it to Hitler's headquarters with his strongest possible recommendation for approval. He knows what's at stake. He's seen the same calculations. Hitler's response comes back within hours. The 6th Army will hold Stalingrad at all costs. Goering guarantees adequate air supply. The army will defend in place while relief forces assemble. There will be no retreat. The message ends with Hitler's typical bombastic rhetoric about willpower, determination, and the superiority of German soldiers who never surrender. At 6th Army headquarters, senior officers receive this order in stunned silence. Some of these men served in World War I. They remember what happened to armies trapped on the Eastern Front in winter. They know exactly what's coming. Younger officers, products of blitzkrieg victories, can read maps. They can do basic arithmetic. Every one of them understands this order is a death sentence. Colonel Wilhelm Adam, Paulus's adjutant, later described the atmosphere as surreal, like watching a slow-motion catastrophe unfold, where everyone can see exactly what's going to happen, but nobody has the power to stop it. Officers who were confident and professional just days ago are now hollow-eyed, speaking in quiet voices, chain-smoking, staring at maps as if the numbers might somehow change if they look long enough. Some officers advocate for disobeying Hitler's order. General Walter von Seydlitz-Kutzbach commands a corps inside the pocket. He argues passionately that Hitler's order violates basic military necessity and common sense. Paulus should order the breakout on his own authority. Accept the court-martial afterward. Save the army now, face the consequences later. Better to be alive and court-martialed than dead and obedient. But Paulus refuses. He's a traditional Prussian officer. His entire career has been built on following the chain of command, maintaining discipline, obeying orders. The concept of disobeying a direct order from the Führer is literally inconceivable to him, regardless of the consequences. Historians still debate this decision. Was it honor? Was it moral cowardice? Was it a man so trapped by his training and worldview that he couldn't save 280,000 lives even when the solution was obvious? We'll never know for certain. What we do know is that Paulus chose obedience over the lives of his men. On November 22nd, just 3 days after the offensive began, Soviet forces link up at Kalach, a town 60 kilometers west of Stalingrad. The encirclement is complete. The 6th Army is now trapped in a pocket roughly 50 kilometers across. Inside this pocket are 284,000 German and Allied soldiers, hundreds of tanks, thousands of vehicles, artillery pieces, and enough supplies for perhaps 2 weeks at normal consumption rates. Staff officers immediately prepare detailed logistics assessments. The mathematics somehow get even worse once the pocket's exact boundaries are established. Daily requirements, 500 tons minimum. 300 tons of food and basic supplies, 200 tons of ammunition and fuel. Luftwaffe maximum capacity under perfect conditions, 300 aircraft sorties per day. Average cargo, 1.5 tons per sortie. Theoretical maximum delivery, 450 tons daily. But those are perfect conditions. In reality, you have to account for winter weather that grounds aircraft for days at a time, Soviet fighters that shoot down transports, anti-aircraft fire around the airfields, aircraft mechanical failures, the time needed to load and unload cargo. Realistic delivery, 150 to 200 tons per day. The deficit is catastrophic. At best, the 6th Army will receive 40% of needed supplies. More likely, 30%. Soldiers will be on starvation rations from day one. Ammunition will be severely rationed. Fuel will run out within weeks. Medical supplies will be exhausted. The Army will gradually weaken until Soviet forces can simply walk over it. On November 24th, Major Zitsevits, a liaison officer from Army Group Headquarters, flies into the pocket to personally assess the situation. What he finds shocks him, even though he's been reading the reports. Frontline soldiers are already on reduced rations. They're hungry. Ammunition is being strictly rationed. Vehicle fuel is nearly exhausted. Medical supplies are critically low. Wounded men are dying from infections that would be easily treatable with proper antibiotics. And the morale. The morale is collapsing. Soldiers have started to understand they've been abandoned. The rumors are spreading through the ranks. We're trapped. The Luftwaffe can't supply us. There's no relief force coming. We're going to die here. Zitsevits flies back to Army Group Headquarters and writes a report that pulls no punches. He calls Göring's air supply promises criminal fantasy. The Luftwaffe cannot supply this pocket. It's physically impossible. Any relief operation will take weeks to organize, and during those weeks, the 6th Army will deteriorate beyond recovery. The only solution is immediate breakout, regardless of losses. His report goes to Hitler's headquarters, and the response is exactly what you'd expect. Hold position, relief forces are being assembled, air supply will be adequate, German soldiers do not retreat.
The bureaucratic death sentence is now being repeated mechanically, as if saying it enough times will somehow make impossible logistics possible. Inside the pocket, German generals are making grimmer calculations. How long can we actually hold? Optimistic assessments say 2 months if air supply improves dramatically. Pessimistic assessments say 6 weeks before the Army ceases to be combat effective. The most realistic assessments give them until late January before complete collapse. These calculations leak down to junior officers, then to enlisted men. Soldiers begin to truly understand they've been written off. The Wehrmacht propaganda about fighting to the last man isn't metaphorical, it's literal. They're expected to die in Stalingrad because Hitler's pride won't allow retreat, and his delusions about air supply ignore physical reality. Some units start preparing for breakout without orders. On November 25th, General von Seydlitz-Kurzbach actually orders his corps to begin withdrawing toward the pocket's western perimeter. He's planning to break out on his own authority if Paulus won't order it, but Paulus finds out and countermands the order. He threatens Seydlitz with immediate court-martial. Discipline still holds, barely. In late November, planning begins for Operation Winterstorm, a relief operation to break through to Stalingrad. General Erich von Manstein, probably Germany's most capable field commander, is placed in charge. His mission: break through to the 6th Army with an armored relief force, establish a supply corridor, and potentially evacuate the trapped forces. Manstein is a realist. He does his own calculations and reaches exactly the same conclusions as everyone else who looks at this situation honestly. The 6th Army is doomed if it stays in place. A relief force might temporarily reach the pocket, but holding open a corridor through 100 kilometers of Soviet-controlled territory through winter is impossible.
The only viable solution is to use the relief operation as cover for the Sixth Army to break out. Both forces fight west together. Yes, you abandon Stalingrad, but you save most of the army. This plan requires Hitler's approval. Hitler will never approve abandoning Stalingrad. The city bears Stalin's name. German propaganda has spent months declaring its capture essential to victory. Retreat would be a massive political defeat that would undermine Hitler's image of invincibility. So Hitler insists the Sixth Army must hold its position while being relieved. After the relief force breaks through, the Sixth Army will remain in Stalingrad, supplied through the corridor. Afterward, future operations will be planned. The disconnect between Hitler's expectations and physical reality is now total. His generals can see it clearly, staff officers can calculate it precisely, even junior lieutenants in the pocket understand the mathematics of their doom. But Hitler's grip on decision-making is absolute, and he's making decisions based on willpower and propaganda rather than logistics and reality. By early December, the Sixth Army's condition is deteriorating visibly. Soldiers are on 300 calories per day. For context, that's barely enough to sustain life at rest. It's nowhere near enough for men fighting in sub-zero temperatures, digging trenches, moving ammunition, conducting patrols. They're starving. Horses are being slaughtered for meat. Wounded soldiers are dying not from their wounds, but from lack of medical supplies. Frostbite casualties are mounting exponentially because there's insufficient fuel to heat bunkers. The Luftwaffe is trying. Transport pilots are flying through blizzards, through Soviet fighter screens, landing on improvised airfields under artillery fire. They're doing everything humanly possible. And they're delivering about 100 tons per day. On good days, maybe 120 tons. They're not even reaching the optimistic estimates, let alone the actual 500 tons needed. The mathematics that staff officers calculated on November 19th are playing out exactly as predicted. Not approximately, not roughly, exactly. The Sixth Army is dying. Not from Soviet attacks, though those are intensifying. Not from combat losses, though those continue. It's dying from arithmetic, from the simple, unavoidable fact that you cannot sustain 280,000 men on 100 tons of supplies per day in a Russian winter. On December 12th, Manstein launches Operation Winter Storm. His relief force, spearheaded by the 6th Panzer Division, attacks northeast towards Stalingrad. Initially, it makes good progress. By December 19th, the relief force is just 48 kilometers from the pocket's perimeter. 48 kilometers. You could walk that distance in a day under normal conditions. Manstein sends a coded message to Paulus. Begin breakout operation immediately. Fight southwest to link up with relief force. This is the moment. This is the last possible chance to save the Sixth Army. Paulus requests permission from Hitler to execute the breakout. Hitler refuses. The Sixth Army will hold its position, no retreat. By December 23rd, Soviet forces have stopped Manstein's advance and are beginning to push it back. The relief operation has failed. The last chance is gone. The Sixth Army will remain trapped until it's destroyed. Throughout January 1943, the pocket shrinks gradually as Soviet forces press inward. Soldiers are now on 200 calories per day. Some units are down to 100 calories. Men are literally starving to death at their posts. The wounded are dying in field hospitals that have no medicine, no anesthesia, no heat. Frostbite casualties have become so common that it's not even reported anymore unless it requires amputation. On January 30th, Hitler promotes Paulus to field marshal. The message is clear. No German field marshal has ever surrendered. Hitler expects Paulus to either break out or die fighting. On February 2nd, 1943, after 76 days of encirclement, the last German forces in Stalingrad surrender. Of the 284,000 men trapped in the pocket, approximately 90,000 are still alive to be marched into Soviet captivity. Most of them will die in prison camps. Only about 6,000 will ever return to Germany. The mathematics were perfect. The staff officers who did those calculations on November 19th predicted almost exactly what would happen. They knew with certainty their army was doomed. They knew there was nothing they could do about it, and they were absolutely right. This is the terrifying thing about Stalingrad. It wasn't lost because of some brilliant Soviet tactical maneuver in the final hours. It wasn't lost because of unexpected weather or a surprise attack. It was lost on November 19th, 1942, in a bunker 40 miles behind the front lines when a group of officers finished their calculations and realized they were already dead. Everything that happened after that moment was just mathematics playing out to its inevitable conclusion.